Are you completely sure that in these cases Ukraine will win?
You're never sure. The United States is not just going to be the prosecutor. They may also be the defendant, so they see it from both sides. In the fall of 2021, they said, there's a chance that Putin will invade. What do we do? Maybe we should develop a theory for that possibility. And we did. One possibility is he could be overthrown. He could flee. For all we know, he set up a dacha somewhere in the Middle East and could take money. And a third possibility is he could negotiate.
Professor, we are here because now in The Hague, there is a hearing of the genocide case against Russia. When this idea has appeared among lawyers of Ukrainian state and lawyers who help Ukraine, by that time it was not clear that Russia is really going to commit genocide. Now we have Bucha, we have Mariupol, we have quite a few evidences. Is that enough to charge Russia in genocide in wider term?
Well, there's many war crimes are being committed. It's interesting that the International Criminal Court prosecutor, to this point, has only charged Putin with stealing children. As far as we know, he has not yet charged him with genocide. One of the problems is in a war zone, it's hard to gather this kind of evidence. And there is now a number of groups who are involved in gathering the evidence. So this evidence could come to show this. But I think that, as we say in the US, you have to walk before you can run. Well, the purpose of this case was to call out Russia's false use of the Genocide Convention. They use the claim as the justification to invade. So if it turns out the claim is false, then their right to invade is also illegal. The fact of the matter is that there was no definitive ruling that Russia engaged in illegal behavior. The Security Council would not rule because Russia has a veto. UN General Assembly votes, you can have a very large number, but that's not proof of international law. So a ruling by the highest court of the UN system is very important to say that what Russia is doing is illegal. If what it's doing is illegal, that makes it permitted to, for example, impose sanctions and to do other kinds of enforcement actions against Russia and its officials. And it can encourage things like the ICC arrest warrant. So it's the beginning of a dynamic process. And where that process will it end where you're suggesting? We don't know.
So Russia will be presented as a guilty country, but what then? Putin has no respect to international law, and this respect would not appear in Russia even if international court takes a decision.
Well, this is not about whether Putin believes. This is about whether the world believes. The Russian soldiers and the Ukrainian soldiers have been having an extraordinary struggle. The Ukrainian soldiers have done extremely well with resource disadvantages. But on the field of law, I think that the Ukrainians are winning.
What will change in practice?
Well, I think the Chinese and the Indians are being affected. If the order says that Russia cannot be in Ukraine, and those countries give weapons to Russia, then they are in violation of international law. And China and India both like to be seen as acting consistently with international law. They have a judge on the International Court of Justice. So in fact, I think that there are any number of reasons why China has not come in completely on Putin's side. But I think this is definitely a factor. They don't want to be branded as outlaws along with Russia.
You said that Ukraine is doing better than Russia in international law domain. Are you completely sure that in these cases Ukraine will win?
You're never sure. If a friend of yours gets cancer and there's a treatment and they apply the treatment, you say, I hope he will survive. But it turns on many factors, including the strength of the patient and the skill of the doctor. So you can't be sure. It's not a scientific prediction, but it's a statement of of collective will. And I think what we've seen is it's given Ukraine's diplomatic partners an avenue by which they can express their view that this is not just Ukraine versus Russia. This is Russia against international law. And if you attack international law and you attack Ukraine, then many will come in on the other side. And my president, Joe Biden, put it this way, is that Putin thought that the alliance would crumble. In fact, it's gotten stronger.
By the way, now I see that the United States are changing their position towards international law. We used to see that Washington, D.C. does not cooperate with ICC. Now, the United States have provided some evidences to ICC in Ukrainian case.
This is where the Ukrainian crisis is helping to address this issue and creating more momentum political momentum in the United States to cooperate with the ICC. You know, remember the United States was in the prosecution group at Nuremberg and also in Tokyo. So the United States was helpful in beginning the international criminal law movement. The United States helped to set up the Yugoslav Tribunal and the Rwanda Tribunal. And President Clinton supported the idea of the ICC. So there is a pendulum swing. Some administrations are more hostile. But this has been typical that the United States takes longer to commit itself to an international court than other countries. You know, the United States never ratified the Permanent Court of International Justice, which was set up by the League of Nations. And one reason for this is, as a country with global interests, the United States is not just going to be the plaintiff or the prosecutor. They may also be the defendant, so they see it from both sides. There are some countries who will only see this from the perspective of someone who's pursuing someone in these courts, and so they tend to have a more one-sided view.
With Nuremberg, it was possible to establish it only when Nazi Germany has fallen. Do you see that now we will have a jump in trials against Russian war criminals only after Russia fails?
Well, it is true that Nuremberg was successful because the defendants were all captured and in custody, and that Hitler was dead. In the current situation, we have an ongoing war. Nobody is in custody except for some individuals who are being tried by the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office. But you also have to remember that at the time of Nuremberg, some people were proposing that the Nazi prisoners simply be shot, no trials. And instead, they set up a system to try to determine the facts, determine who's guilty. They had defense counsel. And Justice Jackson, Robert Jackson, who was the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, who was the prosecutor, said, never has power paid more tribute to reason than to stay the hand of vengeance, meaning we don't act out of vengeance, we act out of law. And I think that that's the principle that's being vindicated here. Now, you know, Putin is still on the loose, and he has troops who obey him, and he has resources. But he is much more isolated than he was before. You notice, for example, he didn't go to the BRICS summit in South Africa. He can't really travel. His money can't move. His freedom of movement is very substantially limited. And, you know, he made a catastrophic mistake. You know, he decided to invade a peaceful neighboring country that had a lot of allies, and he misjudged the reaction. So this is he'll be paying the price for this for many years to come. And I think it's also clear that he has a very slim possibility to stay on for the long term. Even in Russia, many are unhappy. You know, he has subjected them to sanctions. Many people are being conscripted and sent to the front. Their families are very upset because those who are being sent to fight don't have adequate weapons or armor. They don't want to fight. They're being drafted. So a lot of people I know are thinking that Putin has made a tremendous mistake. And even someone as evil as Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner group, felt confident enough to challenge Putin. So, Putin seems to have had his vengeance on him, but it shows that Putin is not invincible.
But would you back an assumption that Putin have to be overthrown or killed to have a breakthrough in establishing justice?
Well, it's hard to know. One possibility is he could be overthrown. Yuri Andropov was quietly removed, former KGB. He could flee. KGB agents tend to have exit strategies. So for all we know, he set up a dacha somewhere in the Middle East and could take money. And a third possibility is he could negotiate. And but I don't think he'll be able to negotiate for his own freedom from criminal responsibility. So he has very few options at the moment. So he did this out of a sense of wanting to restore the Soviet Union. Ironically, he has driven Ukraine much more into the West.
That's true.
Now the supply chains are much more connected to Europe. Every Western nation is in alliance with Ukraine. So he's his own worst enemy in terms of achieving his own objectives.
I'm asking about that because in Ukraine, as you can imagine, for people who are taken as hostage of this outrageous war, this personal responsibility is the key. People want to see Putin tried in Hague, which is hardly achievable. People want to have tribunal established, which, we don't see enough progress by now. And there is a feeling, and I rather share it, that the West is waiting for, and not only West, again, Global South, East, and so on, that the world is rather waiting for some outcome of the war. Whether Russia is completely on loose and, it had to be treated accordingly, or Russia can sustain. Would you back that assessment?
Well, we have an expression, don't let the best be the enemy of the good. There is no tribunal. It doesn't exist yet. And maybe if it existed now, it would be the best outcome. But it will take a lot of resources and a lot of diplomatic energy to establish it.
Do you believe it's possible?
It's possible. The question is this the best way? If I want to go to Lviv, I could either go and take a train going to Warsaw and then go to Lviv, or I could wait till they build a train that goes only to Lviv. That could take years. So sometimes you do what is not the ideal, but because it's more realistic in the short term.
Like
hybrid tribunal is being proposed, other kinds of things. And this is a subject of extensive diplomatic discussion, and Ukraine obviously has a governmental position which is addressing the political situation as it exists at each moment.
And that drives me to the next and probably the last question. Who is behind the idea to sue Russia with this genocide case without having charges in genocide against Russia? Who was that?
Well, this is the product of discussions with the International Legal Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And it's people who know how treaties are being used. And we were in a situation where we were working on the prior case. They put together a team that argued the terrorism financing and race discrimination case. And in the fall of 2021, they said, there's a chance that Putin will invade. What do we do? And we said, maybe we should develop a theory for that possibility. And we did. And then the invasion occurred, and we asked them, what do you want to do? And they contacted us. They were in the Carpathian Mountains. They had driven 26 hours. They wanted to go back into the court. I think President Zelensky wanted to give some hope to the people. And so we filed, and we were able to get into the ICJ on March 9th. You know, the invasion was February 24th, and we got a ruling from them March 16th. So not even a month after the invasion began. And on this legal war, Ukraine can be on the offensive. So, and I think it's spread out into a number of different forums: European Court of Human Rights, WTO, Law of the Sea. And on this, Ukraine has great lawyers.
Am I correct in understanding that you've been analyzing possible invasion and even charge of Russia in ICJ even before the invasion has happened?
Well, we've been thinking about these issues going back to 2015. You know. Anyway, it's all because the Russians agreed. You know, remember even yesterday in the court, Russia said how much it cared about international law, that it obeys the Genocide Convention. Their argument is we're obeying the Genocide Convention, and we say, fine, let a neutral court decide what the rules are. You know, it's not just for you to make these rules in a self-serving way. And so there's a court with 15 judges and one other, and they're going to decide the international legal systems of the world. So that's the way it should be in the 21st century.
And let the justice prevail.
Let justice prevail.
And thank you very much for helping Ukraine in this lawfare, in this legal war against aggressor, which is ruining world order. And I hope you, our MFA and international court, all international courts would not allow Russia to do so.
I'm very honored to work with Ukraine, and the courage and the humanity of the Ukrainian people is very inspiring to me. And I have many Ukrainian friends, and it's the least I can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
І дякую, що додивилися це відео. Сподіваюся, вам було цікаво і вам точно важливо, щоб Україна перемогла у цій війні. Лишайтеся на каналі Європейської правди, каналі про Європу, НАТО та місце України у світі.